Happy New Year to all of you guys. This is my first video back from the new year, and we're going to be hoping to be doing this very regularly. Give it this year and see if it's successful, and I hope it's successful. And make sure you guys comment about the topic that we have today. Do you believe that the college football playoff needs to be fixed? And if you believe it needs to be fixed, what is your fix? And if you don't believe it needs fixed, why don't you believe it needs fixed? What do you like about the current format? We're going to talk about all of that, and we're also going to rehash the playoff games, but we're not going to quite get into the preview because that'll come tomorrow. We're going to be making a video talking about the two semifinal games. But the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Oregon Ducks are the center of the conversation. Now I want to start on the winning side with Ohio State, and we'll circle back to Oregon because it relates to the general topic of the video. The Ohio State Buckeyes had a program-defining win against the Oregon Ducks. That's very obvious. That's very clear. And I think a lot of people really expected Ohio State to be a tough out in the college football playoff, but I don't think anybody expected this type of craziness that we've seen from this Ohio State team, in particular on the offensive side. Now, don't get me wrong, the defense has been playing amazing. They've been amazing all year. They haven't been anything in the playoff that we haven't seen for weeks. The only game that was kind of the outlier was the Oregon game, and they proved it by shutting down that Oregon offense in the first half. It was up 34-0 right before the last play of the first half. That's really impressive against that Oregon offense. But we knew the defense was that way. The shift in identity with the offense, the multiplicity in the run game, the way to use motion, the gel of the two philosophies, I guess, that are similar but still different. With Chip Kelly, more of the run game style of coordinator, and then you got Ryan Day, more of the pass game coordinator kind of thing. And you're blending those two worlds together, and it's creating this perfect storm. And there's a reason why Ohio State is the favorite going into the semifinals to win the national championship, and they were second in odds to win the national championship before the Rose Bowl. They end up going and they dominate that game, shocking everybody, including myself. I did not expect that. I don't think anybody expected Ohio State to be up 34-0 right before halftime, but they were. And this Ohio State team has turned into kind of like a Death Star mode. But see, when you talk about the opponent that they're going to be playing with, the Texas Longhorns, they're coming into this game with a little bit different of a perspective. You look at what Texas was able to do against Arizona State, some punches, winning a little bit on special teams, though, you know, don't slight what Arizona State was able to do special teams wise. In particular, that fake punt was just crazy. But Quinn Ewers, so up and down in this game, kind of just summarizes the career that he has had. And now the questions on what Quinn Ewers is going to do is going to linger with Texas, despite the fact that Texas still has games to play with Quinn Ewers as their quarterback. Will he enter the draft, or will he be playing at another college? Because he's not welcome back at Texas next year. The Texas team that we saw definitely has red flags and concerns, but similar to Ohio State before the playoff, Texas still has the potential that they could reach. A lot like Ohio State, when their offense played their best game of the year in the regular season against Oregon, the defense didn't show up in that game. The defense was dominant against teams like Nebraska and Michigan, and even against Penn State. Penn State was in that game because of a pick six and the offense having a stretch in the late first quarter, mid first quarter to the mid second quarter where they dominated the game. But outside of that, and then taking over with the run game, which was very impressive, the defense really won that game for Ohio State. It always seemed like this year with Ohio State that the offense and the defense could not play well at the same time. And I feel like Texas is a similar way, except they don't seem to have many stretches within games where the offense plays well when the defense plays well. When the offense is clicking, the defense ends up carrying them as well. And then when the offense kind of dies out and they're not able to do as much, the defense kind of dies out a little bit, allowing for these little comebacks and these little surges. I mean, it happened against Vanderbilt too. It didn't cost them then. But if they allow that to happen, let's say they get up against Ohio State, if they allow that to happen, Ohio State's got the ammunition to be able to come back and win that game. They are Georgia was able to do it in the second half too. They're not Vanderbilt. They're not Arizona State. So if Texas is going to win this game, they're going to have to learn a lot, be proud of the fact that they survived, be proud of the fact that they're one of 4 teams remaining for a national championship, and try to put together their best performance. I think that that's going to be really important for Texas. And when you're talking about the other 2 games, look, Penn State, Boise State, not too eventful in my eyes. I thought Boise State would give them a better game, though. There were times where Boise State was hanging around, but at the end of the day, Penn State did a better job against Ashton Jeanty than I figured. And Ashton Jeanty, I don't know if it's tired legs or whatever, he looked like the second best running back in the college football playoff last week on New Year's week, I guess, or whatever. He looked like the second best. Cameron Skattebo definitely lit him up. Now, it hasn't been like that all year. Just in the back half of the year, Cam Skattebo got hot, and Ashton Jeanty, likely fatigue, tapered off a little bit. I think that when you're looking at Penn State and when you're looking at Notre Dame, who had a very impressive victory, dominant on defense, you're expecting a defensive showdown, and it's going to come down to which team is going to have more success throwing the football. Just a little bit of a teaser for that one. All right, let's talk about the main topic here. College football playoff needs to be fixed. The structure that we have. You take a look at that structure right there, and that's the initial bracket, of course. All right. When you're breaking down what you see on your screen right now, you might be asking yourself, why is Ohio State the 8th seed? And the simple answer is because they lost to Michigan. See, a lot of times when you ask for something and there's collateral damage with it, a lot of people don't take accountability for the collateral damage that comes with their request. And not so many words, it's pretty simple. A lot of you guys wanted the 12-team playoff, and this is what you get. Your product of the 12-team playoff is Ohio State. And I don't know why this is so dumbfounding to a lot of people, why people are surprised by this, or Ohio State was like underseeded or whatever. They weren't underseeded. If they were ranked any higher, people would have a problem. People had a problem with Ohio State being ranked above Tennessee. The Ohio State Buckeyes are a product of the 12-team playoff, and it's not the other way around. The 12-team playoff, expanded from 4, is going to give second chances to teams that previously did not deserve it. And we knew this. Talking heads like Josh Pate had talked about this for years. But here's the thing. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. We're not going back to 4. We're not going down to 6 or 8. We're not going back to 2. So, even if that's your request and that's what you want, comment it down below and tell me why you like that. But it's just not going to happen. We're going to stay at 12 or we're going to grow. So what do you do going forward? Well, I have 3 requests. Number 1, with the college football playoff, you have to keep the importance of the conference championship games, or you have to get rid of them. I am not a fan of getting rid of them. So initially, all 3 of my proposed solutions to the supposed problem, to me, that's not really much of a problem, but I'll get to that at the end. The conference championship games are going to be sacred in my mind. It might not be in yours, and that's fine. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I just feel like it can get very messy. So the first thing that you can do is you can get rid of those automatic buys. But I do believe you got to reward conference champions. The top 5 conference champions still get in, and you change the wording from a top 4 conference champ is guaranteed a bye to a top 4 conference champ is guaranteed either a bye or a home field game. How I would structure this is pretty simple. If you want to have the top 4 have a bye, that's fine. If I guarantee you at least one or two every single year will be a conference champ, but assuming that one or two of those top 4 teams are conference champs, like this year would have been 2. That 5 and 6 seed, let it be those next 2 conference champions. Arizona State hosting, I believe that would be SMU. And then you would have Boise State hosting Clemson. Clemson gets that 5th spot with the conference championship. Still have Oregon at 1. You still have Georgia at 2, but then you elevate Penn State and Notre Dame, or Penn State and Texas. It would be Texas 3, Penn State 4. When you do that, then it will kind of maybe slide the rankings below. Notre Dame would hold as the 7th seed. Ohio State would hold as the 8th seed. And 9th seed would be Tennessee. So things wouldn't change too drastically there. But what you do end up doing is you still reward those regular seasons. And most years, I don't believe you're going to have that problem with a Goliath or a sleeping giant who's now awake in Ohio State being a mismatch for the 1 seed in the playoff. The second thing that I would recommend is reseeding after the first round. But you can't reseed based on the college football playoff seeding. You have to reseed based on the college football playoff poll off of the ranking. How that would look is if you went off of the seeding, then we would have got the same exact second round matchups. But if you went off of ranking, you would have those Boise States, though they'd get a bye, Boise State, Arizona State, they would be playing another team that's going to be rested. And they're going to be playing the 1 seed because they're going to be a lower ranked team. So it would be like Oregon versus Arizona State, which would be fun in the Rose Bowl at that. Georgia versus Boise State. And then you would have those 3 and 4 seeds or those middle 2 games basically being matchups between teams that won their first round matchup. It won't always work out like that. It won't. But in this particular year, it would. But the third, and I think that this is probably the most likely solution and the best solution, expand it to 14 if you really got a problem with it. If you really got a problem with it, expand it to 14. Give 2 automatic buys to conference champs, which are more than likely most years going to be the Big Ten and the SEC. If you're going to try to make this a 2 major conference type of sport with the Big Ten and the SEC, then don't make it an automatic qualifier for the Big Ten SEC necessarily, but you make those 2 automatic qualifiers, and the 2 teams that get the benefit are more than likely the SEC and the Big Ten teams. A lot of people might not like that, but that's how you avoid the situation that we got in. Arizona State and Boise State having a bye, not being treated unfairly for winning their conference, and having very successful seasons at that. Like Boise State's only loss before the playoff was by 3 points to the number 1 team in America. Why should they have to travel on the road to an environment like Texas or Notre Dame? I don't think that's fair for Boise State. They took care of their business. They did everything that they could do. And same with Arizona State, by the way, just to a lesser degree, because they did have those 2 early season losses. I think expanding it to 14, it opens more doors up to teams like, the next 2 out, I believe, were Alabama and Miami. It might have been Ole Miss. You guys have to fact check me on that. But it would open the door for those 2 teams, obviously, and a lot of people won't be a fan of that, but you open the door to Ohio State with the expansion in the first place, plus the Alabama team that I saw against Michigan, and the Miami team, I saw against Iowa State. Granted, Cam Ward sat out, but those 2 teams are not doing anything in the playoff anyway. So I think that it's fine the way it is personally. But if you are going to change things, those are the 3 things I like the most. And my favorite one is expanding it to 14. Because if you're going to go all in with these other conferences are just not the same as the SEC and the Big Ten, that's fine. Put your money where your mouth is. Get the 2 buys. I think that that would be very, very appropriate. But ultimately, the Ohio State Buckeyes have just shown us what we knew all along. We have always had a team that dropped one tough game, or maybe two games that they shouldn't, but one tough game and then a game that they probably shouldn't, or maybe two tough games. Sometimes the field is so competitive with a 4 team in the past that a really good team has one loss and gets left out. Twice that happened to Ohio State, where they went 11-1 and got left out. Sorry, 3 times. 3 times to my memory, at least. 2015, 2018, and 2023. When you had a 4-team model, teams like Ohio State or like Alabama, what was it, last year? No, 2 years ago? It was 2 years ago. Those teams are going to get a second shot. And believe me when I say I think Alabama would have had a serious shot back in 2022 to win the national championship in a 12-team format, the same way Ohio State has a serious shot this year. You wanted expansion. This is what you get. You're going to give opportunity to teams like Ohio State, and Ohio State has put it together, and you guys have to just deal with it. Because if you asked for a 12-team playoff, this is the repercussions that you potentially face. If you want a 4-team playoff, doesn't open the door even farther for Arizona State, Boise State, etc. It gives them a chance, which they didn't previously have other than Cincinnati. But it also gives teams like Ohio State another life.